This episode of the Brewtally Speaking podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. The Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BREWtally and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give
up. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brewtally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Fabio Grimdrap. I believe I'm saying that correct. You know me in pronunciations for things not said in everyday speech. He is the guitar player of Trollfest, and this was an interesting one. This came across my email a little while ago, and was one where sometimes when I'm pitched bands, it's like, well, they like to party and they like to drink, and I'm like, I mean, that's not really the crux of the chat, although there is an episode coming up with Tony from Municipal Waste that sort of is very much in that line, but it's more about just kind of having a conversation and seeing where it goes. And so what was kind of interesting about this is, you know, in the press bio that I had read for Trollfest, it said that they were in Eurovision. They were actually a band that was in Eurovision and had, you know, made it pretty far. And so I see that and I'm like, okay, you got me. I'm intrigued. I need to know more about Eurovision because I'm just kind of like, obviously the movie came out a couple years ago, and I remember thinking to myself, like, this can't be what it really is. Like, it's probably like, if 100% of what Eurovision is, that movie is probably 10% of it. Because like anything, you know, that's been dramatized for a movie or for anything like that, you know, it's livened up and embellished to like the 11th degree. So it was one of those where curiosity definitely piqued my interest on this one. So, but honestly, can just say that, I mean, what a great conversation, honestly, having with Fabio and having, you know, talking about Eurovision and talking about the band and talking about, you know, the genre of it's kind of hard to say what Trollfest is necessarily, where they fit. They don't necessarily fit into any one category. But to kind of talk about the differences, I guess sort of socially and all that of, you know, that a band like that can go to a music show competition, and we see it all the time, you know. Now with social media being what it is, we're able to kind of see the world more literally as it is versus how it's presented by other forms of media and so forth. So I feel like there's this fourth wall getting knocked down, and we're able to really see things for how they really are. And, you know, you see these singing competitions overseas, and you see someone singing a Slipknot song or singing a Behemoth song, and some little girl, you know, recently, I don't remember if it was here in the States, you know, singing that Spirit Box song. But it's one of those where typically metal and hardcore and all that is kind of a second, you know, a bastard stepson basically of anything mainstream media. And when I see these singing events and these like song contests and so forth overseas, it's almost like the exact opposite, where it's like, you know, you look at a band like Lordi, who joined, like, I forget what nationality they are off the top of my head, but, you know, they entered into to write a new national anthem and got kind of far. And it's one of those where I see things like that and it's like, I wish I wish it was the same here. And I don't know if I attribute that to the closed-mindedness of Americans and the fact that we have to separate things. Like, you know, instead of us as metal or hardcore fans going, oh, really great for insert whatever band here, that they were able to do this or get very far. Instead, it's looked at like, well, fuck that band. They are posers. They're just trying to sell out. And it's like, we don't try to elevate our own. We don't try to capture and celebrate everyone's successes. And I mean, that really goes beyond even music. That's just in fucking general. You know, I've talked quite a bit on this show about how people want to build people up just to fucking tear them down so they can feel better than them. But it's one of those where that was something that was really interesting to talk about. And Fabio was actually really gave some really interesting perspectives on it that I hadn't really thought of. And, you know, I think it's in having these conversations that I think really allows us to kind of maybe push forward and to start supporting one another. I mean, to me, I would love to have seen this band win Eurovision. I mean, I probably wouldn't have seen it because it's not broadcast here, but to me, seeing a band, I'm not saying they're taking the piss, but they're just having fun, and like you'll end up hearing him say, like, where it's like, let's just see what happens and have fun, because that's the whole reason everyone does a band. That's the whole reason anyone does anything in a creative endeavor, is just to have fun. And I think somewhere along the way, we all kind of lose that. But I don't want to lose you before we even get into the chat. So let's get into my chat with Grimdrap, Fabio, whatever you want to call him, guitarist of Trollfest, and I will talk to you on the other side of it. I've done that once before. It's there's nothing worse than being like, when you get done with something or realizing and you're looking at everything. I don't know if you've ever done this, like recording anything, and they're just like, fuck, I didn't actually hit record on that.
Yeah, I haven't done it in this setting, but I recorded someone, or I was tracking someone while they were playing drums, and they were like doing a good take, and I'm like, fuck, I didn't record like 2 of the microphones.
You know what? Actually, from a production standpoint, that's a new technique I'm trying. So it's not that I made a mistake; it's exploration on my part.
Yeah.
So how are things with you today? You know, it's always interesting, kind of. So I worked a bar shift, and it was last night, and it was disgustingly slow. And there's nothing worse than like when you're like, because I work door at a bar, and I'm just like, it's so slow, it's so slow, it's so slow. And then right before we start to close, it's when like all the other bar people that got out and some of the other people that are like leaving those bars start coming to yours and like, I wish you would fucking leave and not come here.
Yeah, well, it's how early is it where you're now?
It's a little, it's past noon right now, my time.
Okay, yeah, it's not that bad.
No, it's rockstar life. Wake up at like 10:30 in the morning, and after getting a couple hours of sleep,
do some interviews.
Yeah, you know, so I know you're probably going to get a lot of this, but like, it's just something so intriguing to me from a talking point. You know, in the press release I got for, you know, the upcoming album and so forth, it was talking about how, you know, you guys had made it into Eurovision and so forth, and obviously here in the States with that Will Ferrell movie kind of, I think, bringing it to light of what it is, even if in a more comedic way. You know, it's still interesting to see and think about how, I'll say, at least not here in the States, you know, we don't see rock and metal and so forth typically presented in, you know, competition shows or quote unquote reality shows. So I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the process, I guess, of getting accepted, and kind of how it seems like between yourselves, like Eskimo Callboy and stuff like that, like there seems to be I don't want to call it a want or a desire, but like you guys get to have that opportunity to be able to go and play, you know, on something like that and in a competition based thing, and just kind of the process of, because I don't know much about it, and I don't know that many people that listen to this would as well.
Well, well, there's a lot of things to say about the entire thing. But first, the movie isn't that far off. It's pretty on point of what it is.
Is it
To be
really?
honest, like yeah, it's so much cheese.
Oh man.
Like everything, just oh well, let's do the most cheesy stuff we can. You know how pop music is. That's basically what it is. You can say it's kind of it's very much uh, some people have kind of said it's like The Voice or like America's Got Talent, probably have that kind of stuff. Only for like musicians who are releasing music and making music videos. So it's kind of strange that you don't have that. Actually, you should start getting on that. But it's kind of like a battle of the bands in the end. Except we have the like national, international competitions and tons of money and resources still going into it. It's pretty crazy.
You know, it is kind of funny you say that, you know, we don't have something similar to that. And I think that's kind of what was intriguing about it to me is there's kind of, I guess here in the States, almost like a stigma of like, if you do something like that, or if you perform on something like that, that you're, I guess, kind of deemed a lesser than or not as credible a musician or whatever. And, you know, and I think one of the bigger examples I can kind of think of off the top of my head is like Daughtry. You know, he did a lot of rock covers and kind of bluesier stuff. And, you know, it was kind of obvious he's not going to win. But it was one of those where at times you kind of feel like, well, you could go, let's root for him because he's the only one kind of carrying the torch for what they're doing and what we like. And some of these bands we all love. But instead, collectively, it seems like rock and metal fans, at least here in the States, are like, fucking boo that guy. And then you're like, why? But to see the career he's had since, and it's like, I feel like finally he has gotten out of the shadow of just being the American Idol guy. And it's like, dude's had almost a 20-year career at this point and is still doing very successful for himself. So I think that's kind of the interesting thing when I think about, you know, Eurovision from my perspective as someone who, you know, doesn't get to see it until well after the fact, that it seems like over there you guys get championed for doing those kind of things and your fans support it, whereas it's almost like a stain on someone here doing something like that.
It's kind of a dualistic thing because you need to play your cards right. I talked to basically one of the first guys who ever was in a rock type of band, and they were basically castrated completely, so they lost their like soul by doing it and couldn't stand in with their own thing. So you need to, like, you can't take yourself very seriously and be a really dark, like a black metal band and go on Eurovision. That's like it's Trollfest, I guess, was the one of those metal bands who could do that. So we didn't have anything to lose. There's no face to lose.
It's funny to me because I feel like, you know, watching some of the clips that were provided along with the press release, you know, it's one of those where I feel like there are some bands like yourself and like Eskimo Cowboy and some of the other acts I've seen, you know, in suggested videos from past years where I almost be like kind of, I don't want to say taking the piss, but I'll say taking the piss kind of almost gets you further because it's like, well, we're in on it too. Like, we're dressed as fucking flamingos, man, and we're talking about, you know, flamingos and all these kind of things. It's like, it seems like people realize there's an authenticity to it, even though it's kind of like, how outlandish can we make this? But I think in the presentation, it's like everyone just wants to have fun, and if they see you're having fun, how can you not gravitate toward that instead of being like, we're playing and we're serious because we're a metal band? And it's like, it's fun to kind of see over the last couple of years, I think, really, you know, metal bands being allowed to have fun.
Yeah, it's, I would say in Norway it's probably the hardest out of probably any country, because we have this like black metal culture and we take a lot of pride in that. And People think we're kind of making fun of that genre in a way. But yeah, that thing wouldn't fly 30 years ago at all, probably. But the weird thing is that I also play in another band that is kind of exactly that. So I like both things. There's one very stark difference between Norway and other countries when it comes to this is when playing a live show in Norway, people are very much into standing like this, which is exactly what I do too. I'm Norwegian, so I'm not gonna say anything about that. But some places are more prone to having fun at concerts than others. You could say France, Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark. People just go nuts. So you need kind of a certain market to be able to play metal and have fun, I guess. And Norway is, for example, not that kind of place where that's gonna hit really hard. We're hoping that that the Eurovision thing was kind of gonna make us a little bit more credible in the Norwegian commercial market, because the black metal market is never gonna take us serious anyways. So we'll see where it carries. We don't really know what the effects of that were, to be honest, but it was hilarious and was really good PR. So
well, I mean, you bring up an interesting point to me. You know, I very much, you know, I live in a city here in Michigan, and I like to call us a musician's town. Like there's, I mean, you can't throw a rock and not find someone that's in at least 1 to 2 other bands. And it kind of sucks at times going to see bands and going to shows, because you get a lot of this, but you get it with the, like, what gear are you playing? What kind of pedals you got? Like it's everyone studying the band versus letting loose. And it was one of those where, thinking back to going to see Dillinger Escape Plan, one of the last times I saw them, and you know, you see all these videos and everyone, it's just chaos on stage, usually in the crowd, people grabbing onto shit, and just it's utterly chaotic from the opening note until the end. And in my city, it was just a whole bunch of people standing there, not moving, just watching them, and kind of like, you know, whatever. And I know it's hard to move around to Dillinger. It's almost like an exercise in just spazzing out for 45 minutes to an hour. But it's one of those that sometimes I am a little bit jealous when I see crowds, you know, kind of being more into bands and being more accepting of having fun and letting loose. But you had said something about, you know, in your other band kind of being in a more traditional death metal kind of style band. Do you, you know, because I know you're not an original member of this band, did you find that it took a little getting used to kind of allowing yourself the not the ability, but the freedom to just kind of let loose and have fun? Was it hard to kind of do that?
Not really. Or
Okay.
kind of. The thing is, I was thrown right into the deep end immediately. We went on a month of touring, 2 months after I joined, with the princess dresses and all of that immediately. So I got thrown into the deep end, and I made it. So no, it's I've been a fan of the band for a long time, and I really enjoy a lot of weird stuff. So it just felt completely natural, to be honest. But we are trying to push ourselves all the time, so no one is gonna be comfortable all the time. Like it wasn't very like we're no. When I first saw our flamingo costumes, I was feeling a little bit unsure about this, to be honest. But we kind of cultivate that extreme absurdity. If there's something that makes us think, no, we can't do this, then that's probably exactly what we should be doing. which has carried this also a long way. But also musically, Trollfest does a lot of things that you don't find in a Norwegian black metal band. You could say it like that. So it's been fun kind of having a Trollfest where we explore all kinds of weird ideas and musical ideas and other projects where we can cultivate the darkness inside of us and all of that pretentious bullshit.
I'm glad you said that, because at times I feel like, on this show, a lot of times, it's a predominantly metal hardcore podcast, but it's funny because in more recent years and such, and doing a friend of mine's podcast for a while where we talk about discographies from start to finish with bands. And, at the end, you would always say like, oh, here's my album of the week. And a lot of mine was so like, it's hip hop, it's R&B, it's, just more straight ahead rock and roll or whatever. And to kind of get some blowback, actually, where people are just like, do you even like metal? And it's like, I do. But here's the thing. I can only listen to so much of it for so long. And it gets kind of tropey. And then you're just like, I'm just not into this. And sometimes it's nice to listen to something completely different, because then you start actually noticing how some of those influences start creeping into what you're actually listening to. And there's been times where, talking to a guest, and I'll be like, I kind of get a really like Bobby, like late 80s, early 90s Bobby Brown kind of R&B vibe in this vocal, or in this, the way like the production is on something, and someone's like, oh my God, yes, absolutely, I was listening to, and you're like, fucking there it is. Like, now I could be a staunch metalhead and not listen to anything else and be super like gatekeepy about it, but to me it's fun when you find and stumble across some of these weird influences people are bringing in, and kind of almost, I don't want to say being in on the joke, but it's almost like, man, like, it's so cool that you were able to take this thing that doesn't seem like it'd fit into this and bring it out in a way that, like, if you're a true fan of music, it just makes you go, ah, man, that's so cool.
Yeah, the thing is, like, music is so much more varied than one genre. Like, basically, if you only know about metal and aren't used to listening to jazz or blues or electronic music, then you probably listen to a lot of music that has taken a lot of influence from those genres without knowing it.
Right.
Also, so I myself, when I was a kid, was kind of an elitist. We all go through those, I guess. But it has mostly come through my passion of playing music. As you said, people ask me like, yeah, well, what do you listen to? Like, what's your favorite band or stuff like that? I'm like, I don't have any favorite bands. And like, if I would listen to something right now, it would be like some electronic pop music maybe, or definitely jazz. I'm geeking out on jazz recently. So yeah, all of that is finding its way into the metal. But I'm a metal musician also, so that's where Trollfest is perfect. It's heavy as fuck, and so sorry about the curse words.
Oh no,
this
totally.
might be a show for children.
Nope, it's totally not. I clicked that link on YouTube when I post this, not for kids.
Okay, well then, cheers. I will have a beer if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? It's afternoon and I'm not doing anything. I'm gonna go grab a beer too. Hold on just a second.
Yeah, awesome.
Been wanting to crack this one open for a hot minute, so this will be a good excuse to do that. Where did I put my can opener? It's always right in front of me too, so that's why I'm like, where'd it go? That is problematic. Well, now I'll have to put that one down and go grab a different one since I can't find my can opener. Hold on just a second again.
Yeah, I have time. I can entertain people.
Suppose that's the perk, at least, of having a fridge full of beer, is you're then having to make a decision on what you're drinking.
Oh yeah.
All right, so I have a hot chocolate stout with cinnamon lactose and chocolate and chilies.
Oh, I'm a sucker for chili beer. Like when you really feel that burn, it's nice.
That's actually a really nice balance of all those flavors. Typically, because I always find that usually with the chilies, or a lot of times you'll see chocolate or cocoa and chili, and they kind of do like a Mexican hot chocolate kind of beer is what a lot of people, when I see them here in the States, try to do. And it's usually either super chocolatey or really like kind of the chili flavor, but it never complements each other when you do. And surprisingly, this one actually is pretty solid, but I think because it's got that the lactose in it, so it kind of, the bitter of the chocolate flavor kind of sweetens, and then kind of the heat kind of brings. So it's a nice little balance of those kind of flavor profiles with the stout base.
Yeah. No, I've never really had most of those beers you just talked about, like what is cocoa?
Yep.
Do you mean like cocoa, like not coconut?
Yeah. So more like so like sometimes with chocolate and beer, and I talk about this quite a bit, where beer flavors are interesting because when you start getting into them, like a great example is, peanut butter beer. So when I think of peanut butter beer,
I never had that before.
Oh, it's
American brewing is a weird place, but you have some crazy shit going on.
Absolutely. But with peanut butter beers, it's funny because a lot of times you'll get like a peanut butter something, like a peanut butter stout. And to me, when I hear that, I'm just thinking peanut butter. That's going to be the only flavor. But what becomes interesting is sometimes you'll get kind of a jelly flavor with it, even if it doesn't say it has jelly or that's not the flavor profile they're looking for. More oftentimes than not, you get a chocolate flavor with the peanut butter, and you get a predominantly chocolate flavor more than the peanut butter, even though it's advertised as a peanut butter beer. So it's always funny when you start kind of getting into some of these beers that do a lot of different flavors, or with chocolate, it's like, are you going more sweet chocolate? Are you going kind of bitter chocolate? Are you, and kind of playing around with what flavor profile are you looking for? And to me, that's kind of where it gets interesting, because it sort of parlays into like music, where it's like, I say metal, and metal to me might be like, all right, I'm thinking like, Acacia Strain or Black Dahlia Murder or something like that. Metal to someone else could be, Five Finger Death Punch or whatever. And we're not wrong, but it's funny to see what metal means to certain people. And I think the same thing kind of correlates into the beer game and spirits and stuff like that as a whole. Just kind of what are you thinking of, and did that flavor come through?
Yeah, it's always kind of strange, like relating to that when people ask me to explain what my music sounds like with words, and like I can put up a bunch of words, but it's gonna like make you think about certain things, but you won't be able to really understand it until you hear it. And that's kind of with beer, like a chocolate coffee stout, like that can be a balance of so many different things. So you need to taste it in order to check it out, which is this is my homebrewn chocolate. No, sorry, not chocolate, coffee stout.
What kind? Did you go more with a dark roast coffee, or what kind of a coffee was your base?
I used around 10% freshly brewed espresso. So just put it into the wort. Worked pretty good, but it killed the carbonation.
I've only made a handful of home brews myself. How many have you made, and what have you kind of found in the process? Because I think when you're going through it and when you kind of get the final product, I think it gives you a better appreciation for the work that goes into creating a beer, especially when it actually hits on what you're trying to set out to do.
Well, brewing is definitely an art, and I'm not master by far. And I don't have the space for a really good setup, so I have pretty much the most primitive setup you can, just a bucket and the room temperature. I'm at the mercy of the temperature here. So well, that's exactly, you nailed it. The appreciation for the amount of work that actually goes into the sanitation and keeping the yeast healthy, and the fermentation needs to be taken care of. It's like having a little pet for a week, basically, that you need to take care of. It's really nice. You kind of understand the unique character of every beer, even beers that are basically the same. If you buy like a Trappist beer from Belgium one year and then the same beer the other year, it's gonna be different because I get all ingredients change. You never get the same harvest in the year.
No,
or the exactly the same roast. It's a living thing.
It's funny because I think the interesting thing to me when I made my first beer with a friend that was like super into it was just kind of assuming, like I went out and bought like, because I did a cherry vanilla porter, but I got like Michigan cherry, so they're like super tart. And then I went and got like Madagascar vanilla beans and kind of, did that whole thing. And it was interesting because like I thought I was over putting stuff in there. And then it was really interesting to see, even after I bottled it and had like the first couple, I was like, this isn't where I thought it was going to be flavor profile wise. And then that was kind of the interesting thing of when you brew, and kind of like you were saying, I found that after I had let the beer sit after bottling it, that the ones I had 4 or 5 months out were better than the ones I had just had when I first started like trying them and drinking them. And to see kind of the difference in flavor profiles, and kind of going, if I were to do this again, I probably would have added more vanilla because it just didn't come through because the cherry were so overwhelming, but you just kind of don't know that until you try. And that's kind of the interesting thing, kind of thinking about it is, it's such a trial and error process, but it also is one of patience. And I feel like in this day and age now, I was just talking, doing an intro outro for an episode coming up soon. And I was talking about, the new Kendrick Lamar record had just come out. And I was seeing so many people like 8 hours after the record come out, like doing think pieces and just kind of commenting on the significance of this record and what it means. And I'm like, this record is not even a day old, and you're already writing these, long synopsises of what you think it is. And it's like, you haven't even let it sit to settle, to like
spend more time writing that one than actually listening to the album.
And to me, it's one of those where I feel like we're just in this culture of like having to be the first with an opinion, with whatever, just literally first. And it's like, but you're not contributing anything by being the first to do something. Like, just because you're there first doesn't mean shit. Like, it's like, I will value the opinion of someone who took the time, waited for the right words and the everything to kind of happen, and then kind of explain, well, this is where I'm at currently. And this concept is kind of something I've thought about a little bit more, where, talking to, I was talking to Billy from A Perfect Circle a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about how, Merde Noms, that first record of theirs, it's grown with me as I've gotten older, and it's changed what it means to me. And it's one of those where it's like, I would assume being, a senior in high school to now being almost 40, it's like, I would hope the music would change and that my life has changed and given me different perspectives on how to look and view these lyrics and these songs and bring out different things in me, than me being like, yep, still feel the same way as I did when I heard it when I was, 17, 18. But I kind of feel like there is a lot of that. And, even as you were saying about the beer, about how annual beers don't taste the same from year to year, I think like some people get mad at that. But, to me, if it's something that I like, I kind of am interested to see what changes and if I can notice it, because that means my palate has changed and grown as well. And I feel like a lot of times people just don't allow themselves to do that. Don't allow themselves to sit and learn and grow and then reflect on how they have.
Yeah, we definitely live in kind of a hurry up culture. For me, I'm a guitarist, which takes a lot of patience. I'm gonna probably be done with my short time goals in 2 years or so. And also when I listen to music, which also reflects on the same thing, people just mass consume a lot of music all the time. And when I check out new music and really want to take time to make up an honest opinion about an artist or something, any piece of music, I want to listen to the entire release in it, basically from start to finish, to see what the artist painted. I don't want to see like a little snippet of the painting, which takes a lot of patience, and you don't always have the time to sit down and listen to an entire album. So I haven't listened to the new Meshuggah album, for example. So that's gonna be a good one. I haven't listened to the new Rammstein album. I also speak fluent German, so that's gonna be fun. So yeah, I always have kind of a backlog of music I'm looking forward to listening to, instead of just mass consuming everything and then always frantically looking for new music. I guess I used to do a lot of that, where I just like listened to everything. I found a lot of good shit, but I felt like I was always searching for something I didn't find. When I started like really listening to albums in its entirety, I found I saw a lot more in certain things I barely listened to before than what I did. So people need to take their time. In general, if you want to know something and learn something, take your time. Which also I'm reading a lot. My two passions are religion and music, basically. So I'm reading the Bible from start to finish right now, which takes patience. Taking a lot of notes, and I'm also trying to learn Arabic now to read the Quran in Arabic, which is probably going to happen in like 4 years or so. So patience is definitely something I've found in my life to be very helpful. Nothing is done. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Well, I think it's interesting as I get older, and I was kind of saying, like being almost 40 at this point, it becomes this thing where, you can't help but almost feel like your parents would kind of look back on things that are happening or trends or whatever and be like, oh, you're just, like in the early 2000s and late 90s, it was kind of like the 70s were kind of having this revitalization. And now here my wife and I are, and we're seeing the mid to late 90s kind of coming back into fashion. And you're like, like we'll go to the mall and see these things that, look like things from the movie like Clueless or whatever. And you're like, fuck, man, this is probably how our parents felt. And like, you're just like seeing a kid wearing a t-shirt of like a band or an artist that they have no idea who it is. And you're like it almost becomes like the metal elitist guy. It's like, name me 2 songs. And it's like, I'm not going to do that, but I'm also just like,
I'm old. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel it. It's kind of crazy, but also kind of nice when it comes to music. For example, there are so many good musicians right now. It's insane. A lot of like the kids, some of the kids that are coming out now are doing some shit that most of my generation are not ever gonna be able to touch. For example, Polyphia. If you've heard about them, you can say what you want about their music, but those guys can fucking play, dude. And they have like their only beginning. That's the music of the future. The bar is always being raised, and us old fucks are left behind doing our weird flamingo Balkan weirdness. Well, that's kind of I wouldn't say that's being left behind. I would say that's finding this weird alternative route. But yeah, music isn't about prestige or like playing the most notes, but I'm in awe of what the future has to bring for young musicians. It's
I
gonna
would
be fun.
I would pose this question to you because it's something I've thought about a lot, falling down the rabbit hole on YouTube of, watching people play covers or watching, getting those sponsored ads on Instagram now or whatever of people doing covers or playing or whatever. And while I love seeing so many people putting forth and investing the time of learning an instrument and learning a craft and, in some instances, if you're doing covers, to showcase other bands that maybe people wouldn't know of through influencers and so forth. But it also makes me wonder when I see some of these. It's like, yeah, you did really good, matching the tones and playing this song proficiently. But it makes me wonder if having these kids who learn how to play and they are doing it to post on socials and so forth and trying to drum up likes or whatever. Typically I don't see a lot of these people in actual bands, or if they are, they don't really promote those bands. So it makes me wonder if it's creating a new generation of musicians who are so technically proficient but don't have the ability to connect and write the songs that they're like write songs like the ones that they're performing, because they don't have that connection or that I don't know the word I'm looking for, but I guess a slightly different way of getting to the point is, I look back at a lot of the bands that I love, and you listen to their first couple records, and it's like it's so raw and it's not polished in any way, shape, or form. And to a degree, to see where the band would go from there is, leaps and bounds, different from where they were. But that showcases the evolution and growth as them as people and musicians. And I think people are missing that foundational part of just creating and then starting to go somewhere, whereas everyone wants to start where basically some people have taken 20-30 years to get to, and they want to start there and not kind of put in the work. I guess going back again to patience, but it just makes me wonder if music and musicality has become more of a commodity versus a passion.
Well, it is definitely still a passion, but it's kind of becoming more like, I guess, classical music, where that's something for those weirdos who nerd out on that kind of stuff. But no, it's a very strange thing because, as I said, people want to start at the level that people usually used to have to cultivate together as a group for many years, and we have the technology to do that. So there's a lot of Instagram musicians, which I, as a studio musicians, I know what's possible. Like it's insane. I also actually I started out on YouTube. My YouTube channel started 2008, I think, something like that. Bunch of covers, which led me to then find a group to play with. So it's, I guess, both a good thing, but as you said, there's also a lot of musicians who seem to only be doing that. So the focus on single people instead of groups of musicians playing together is definitely something we're seeing a growth of, especially with the electronic tools that they don't need a drummer anymore. Yeah, I as a jazz nerd, the like interaction between musicians to me is very important, which I'm trying to. As a studio musician, it's really hard to keep that alive, actually, because when you're first tracking the drums and then you're putting on the bass and then the guitars, you're kind of missing a lot of that actual connection, especially nowadays, in comparison to the old days where you used to practice these songs for many months, like go through them so everything is in your fingers and you hit the studio together and get it done. We write songs and maybe play a little bit on some songs, and then we go into the studio and track everything. A lot of the life can be lost in that. So like trying to it's basically a trick you can do, because drummers are always having like some differences in grooves, and just trying to hook a little bit more onto that when you're recording, just to make it more live. My dream is ultimately to do it like they did in the old days, where you go together into the studio and track everything together then there. But that's, again, it's really hard to make it sound like a modern production in that way, because that's not how you record drums in a room with a lot of noise.
Well, it's kind of funny bringing that up. I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and I was kind of talking about, I noticed that on a song that they had just put out, I was like, I see you have everyone listed as songwriters. And I was like, I thought, based on conversations, that it was you, this person, and this person that basically wrote the whole song. And he goes, well, this person kind of contributed this, I contributed this, da, 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 da. And he goes, it's just easier from pub and all that kind of stuff, and especially with taxes and all that kind of shit, it's just easier to do it that way. But as we were kind of talking and getting a little bit more involved in, the songwriting process for his band, he was like, oh, our drummer, we pretty much didn't even track real drums, because he goes, well, what's the fucking point of me coming in there and wasting time, and more importantly, money, when every hit I do is going to be replicated to the perfect snare hit or the perfect cymbal hit or the whatever. And it's just going to be faster to program them and have them be what you need, so then everyone else can do their part. And I'll just learn it later, and, or I'll be involved in it, but it's just not worth the time to spend trying to get the perfect take, knowing that, my kick drum is going to be replaced with a perfect kick drum, and then just replicated and copy and pasted, and, all these kind of things. And it was one of those where I was kind of like, as someone who grew up where it's more like you're saying, where you get in a studio, your shit forward and backwards, and you write it, and it has a little bit of that live feel, to now where, especially I feel like with, the like gent and kind of, so forth, where it's super tight and like right on a fucking grid, that it's like, it's more kind of mechanical, I guess, in a sense. But like you said, that's kind of the modern production sound at this point. So it's like, if you want to be taken seriously and with contemporaries, like, that's kind of what you need to do. And it was kind of refreshing and interesting to hear someone, even kind of on a local level, just kind of be like, this is what we do, and it just works, and it's easier, and it's more cost efficient. And when he said that, I was like, I mean, fuck, I guess I can't really complain with that, because at the end of the day, it's not like you're getting these outrageous budgets to go record anymore. And the whole point is to, unfortunately, kind of get something done and get in and out and spend as little money as possible to maximize, the money you're spending on production, and putting the money into, merch designs or new gear or vans or whatever. Like, you have to be more conscious of where the money's going. So if it just makes more financial sense to just program the drums and get it done, like, I really understand that. But it's interesting to just see kind of people being, I guess, that honest, just kind of about the process, and just like, it is what it is. And I think it's more interesting too to find that a lot of times people who think a band is, well, the singer writes all of his lyrics, and the guitar player writes all that, and the bass player writes his things, and we're all starting to find out now that it's like, usually it's 1 to 2 people in the band that are kind of the driving force, and they're literally the people who write and perform everything. And then it's kind of like, here's your part, you learn yours, you learn yours, you learn yours. And it's not necessarily the dynamic that everyone thought it was.
Yeah, the entire band dynamic varies so much from band to band. The first band I was in was me kind of being the, okay, this is what we're gonna do. I will be a pain in your ass if you say something else. So I was kind of the overlord there, you could say. In my other band, one guy writes basically all of the instrumentals, where then we arrange it a little bit different, but we're kind of completely equal in every other matter. And Trollfest is, as I said earlier, we all kind of are able to come in with our own song ideas and let everyone else into the pool. So we're kind of taking 8 people's songs in a bowl and just mashing it up with a bunch of saxophone and accordion and see what comes out. So I personally have gone to that point where if I want to have total control in over the music and play with other people, then I would just call it a solo project and then hire those people instead of saying it's a band. To me, it's I've seen the thing that really makes a difference when you're playing a lot in a band, and you have seen those kinds of different dynamics, is when you let someone who knows their shit come in and you let a little bit go of your own ideas, they usually have a tendency to make it a lot more interesting than what you were able to do yourself. And here we have basically 8 people with free reign to do all of that. So it's gonna get weird.
I feel like this is literally just a thought I had, and forgive the stupidity of maybe of this. You are, aside from maybe like a band like Rammstein and Slipknot, I feel like, does being in Trollfest, when you look at what those two bands do with all of the members that are in it, do you get a greater appreciation of the art because of you kind of being in a similar situation with having that many people and that many different influences where you kind of can appreciate what they're doing?
Oh, definitely. The amount of I've never had a keyboard player in my band before, and when I joined the band here, I never realized how much that does. It's crazy because he's not really most of the time he's not like necessarily playing melodies or being very in front. He's soundscaping, kind of making everything
fuller,
very theatrical, and yeah, of course, I've never played with saxophonist either, and Dag is he has a very interesting style. I never knew that people played like that. But I don't know a lot about saxophone, so yeah, that it's the more you know about different styles of music or different ways of thinking about music, the more you understand where everything has its place and how. Basically, I played with a keyboard player once, actually, he wasn't in my band, you could say. I played with him. He made all the songs for guitar and for drums and all that, and he doesn't play any of those instruments, so he just did arrange stuff that basically no guitarist or drummer would ever really want to play. And he's like, oh no, that's my idea, we have to do this, that is the music, so deal with it. Okay, I'll just play this then.
It's funny, I feel like something that would be interesting to be in a group with that many people. I feel like you would learn so much about just balancing and managing relationships. Because when, like, with like 4 people, sometimes I feel like, having done the band thing, it was like I'm really good friends with this guy and this guy. This guy's kind of a bit off-put. Like, he's kind of a loner and doesn't really hang out. So, like, I don't really know much about him. And then, I could kind of see how it creates this thing of like, well, you only like these two. And, I kind of just whatever, because that's just their personality types. But then to double that, it's like, I feel like, and to find a way for everyone to kind of have their voice be heard, it's something I've been kind of thinking a lot about recently, actually. And I kind of talked about it again in an upcoming episode was, I think a lot of people think of themselves as kind of the alpha of anything that they do, my way or the highway. And I have the best opinions and ideas. But I feel like at times, me being really into sports, some of the, best teams, whether it's, soccer, basketball, football, whatever, it doesn't really matter. but you have the person who is kind of your identifiable leader. That is the star, the whatever. But it's really the people who learn to be role players and understand what they do, how to be the best at what they do, but also setting up other people to be the best that they can be. And I feel like I've learned that that is kind of my, no pun intended, but that's my role. Is I'm really good at being a role player for people and kind of facilitating other people to be successful, because I can kind of see these things. And it was something that I kind of realized maybe people don't think of, because everyone, like I said, wants to be the it person. And you can't have all those, you can't have 8 alpha people, because I don't, I just, that I have never seen where that will work, and or where you're not going to drive each other crazy. So to me, it's interesting to think of being essentially in a marriage with 8 people and having to manage all of those different personalities and managing the relationships of the band and the individual people, and just kind of how that maybe has changed you and how you are able to interact and be with other people when you're on a more one-on-one basis.
Oh well, you you talked about some definitely very relevant things. It's basically, as I said, like with smaller bands where you have this little bit more obvious strong relationship, small groups where one person has stronger tendency to be left out. When you're 8 people, everyone's there all the time, so it's just like being in the class. But yeah, the way you relate to people, being in a band is basically, as I said, like being in a family. And to be honest, I personally don't want to be a leader. I want to be part of a successful group of beings. So my my most important thing is maximizing potential within the group, I guess. So yeah, that seems to kind of be the trend. You can definitely say there are some leaders in the group, but that's because they are the people who started the band and have been at it for this is 20 years soon, or 18 years now. So of course they're gonna have a lot of responsibility. I don't know anything about their previous contracts with other red labels and stuff like that. So that's not gonna be my role. So our roles have kind of established themselves very naturally just by the way we give the different people different responsibilities. But there's a strong sense of democracy, and in the end, Trollfest wouldn't really work without the fun aspect. So if we take everything too serious and like make bad moods, then it's not gonna be fun, and then everything is not gonna work. So maximizing fun means working together, also, I guess.
It's interesting to, I mean, in light of, you know, I think for me, in light of the Sergio from Deftones or ex Deftones news kind of coming to light, and a lot of people, I think, getting to see, you know, what it's like to not be an original member coming into a band, and to see that, you know, you're coming into essentially a business, and, you know, thinking about it from the perspective of, you know, this is a business, this is your role, here's kind of your founding, your CEOs, your CFOs, and so forth. And, you know, you want to add to the lineage and keep the success of the business growing because it helps you. But understanding that at the end of the day, you know, some people are, you know, reading comments and so forth. It's interesting to see people like, oh, well, it's sad to see the band's treating it like a business, not a band. And it's like, yeah, you know, that's a talking point I've made quite a bit on this show recently is, you know, everyone starts being a musician because they have the passion for creating and they love the music and all this kind of stuff. And unfortunately, the byproduct as you get so far and become a career musician is that you have to learn about budgets, and you have to learn about, you know, routing of tours and legal things and contracts and all these things that have nothing to do with why you wanted to be a musician in the first place. But if you want to have a sustained career, that eventually they are things that all successful bands have done and traversed. Is eventually you treat it like a business and you have to make smart financial business decisions. And unfortunately, I think in today's world where there's more transparency, I feel like I enjoy that there is the transparency, because it allows people maybe who are getting into these things to have a better understanding of what they're getting into. But I also feel like at times it takes some of the it takes away kind of maybe that brotherhood or that camaraderie that we all start, and the passion, because now it's like, are my motives based on financial gain, or are they based on artistic gain, and can the two exist at the same time?
Yeah, the thing is, once a band starts being a little bit successful, that means stuff like record labels getting in, and that means stuff like contracts, and that also means that you don't have the entire say anymore. So once you start working with businesses like record labels, you kind of get some obligations in a way. We're kind of very good in that way, that we don't obligate ourselves too much. We have a very strong point of still having a bit of fun, where we could technically, I guess, if we wanted to, just everyone quits their jobs, let's focus 100% on this, and we all could maybe live off it. We'll see, maybe in the future. But yeah, no. Also, as a band, once you start growing, taking care of so much merchandise, sending it and all of that, and it's just too much for a band. We're musicians and we're not businessmen, and that's why the business around music works, and that's why sadly it's an inevitability that a little bit of that direct contact between band and consumers, I guess, becomes diluted, and with the transparency, it can look a little bit cynical at times. But I guess that's why people like you are good, where we have interviews and you get to see people see that I'm definitely not a cynical person, and I would never sell my soul for a bunch of money.
It's so funny. Because it's funny you say it, like, the interview and so forth. And it's like, there was a while where when I started the show, I definitely would write questions and I would curate essentially a whole interview. Like, I would come up with one question and I'd be like, that's really cool, but that's not really a starting question. Like, it almost becomes creative writing to a degree, where you're trying to figure out, how do I get to this in a linear fashion? And I realized that when I would listen back, it's like, I felt that I was so regimented in it, because like, if you started deviating, that might have been really cool and I should have followed that. But I'm like, but I wrote these questions and I need to get them in there. And it would be so awkward, because like, maybe you're talking about beer, but I'm like, okay, so back to Eurovision. And it's like, man, like, let it go. That part we already talked about it, and it's fine. Like, let's go on this other tangent of whatever. And I personally have found that just having literally a conversation and letting it organically unfold as it's going to is infinitely more interesting to listen back to, even, because I feel like in that situation, and I've kind of, without getting kind of too hippie about it, but it's like, I've been kind of trying to be more in the moment, going to therapy a year or so ago. That was a big problem I had, was not being in the moment. I was constantly thinking about the next thing or the what ifs that may never happen. And once I kind of tapped into the just be in the moment and just have a fucking conversation with somebody, that everything got so much better. Like, the conversations got better. Like, I felt like I actually learned something, and there were talking points that maybe would stick with me, that like the person was like this, and I'd be like, I never thought of that. And then I would just sit there and think about it. And then that might parlay into the next conversation I have, or something else that happens in my life. And to me, when you kind of let go and allow yourself to be more in the moment, it's amazing what interesting things happen when you kind of are more in tune with that versus being so regimented that this has to be how it is. And I think it kind of goes to, again, like just letting go of control and kind of being patient and just trusting that what will be, and that things, as long as you're paying attention and aren't trying to be malicious, that good things will typically happen.
Yeah, no, that's definitely like from being interviewed also from that angle. I enjoy stuff like this way more than interviews where okay, there's a question and then we go through it, and then half an hour or 20 minutes have gone and we've gone through all the questions. Goodbye. That's it. Like I enjoy picking people's brains and like getting to know. Yeah, like it's not just you and your viewers getting to know me. It's me getting to know about you also, and I don't really know that much about the metal community in the States because I haven't really been that much to concerts there. I've been a lot to the States. I once had a girlfriend from there, but there's, well, we're doing cultural exchange right now.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Well, I mean, I think, there are times in doing this podcast over the last 5 years, I think one of the things that it's taught me is to be more adept at listening. And something I've actually taken and noticed when doing, I don't want to say foreign press, but talking to people who are not from here in the States, something I realized very quickly, and I've tried to adapt as much as I can, is I noticed that, because for the most part, English may not be your first language. And I noticed that sometimes when asking a question, and a very big one I noticed it with was Tatiana from Ginger, that when you don't have the thought, like the words to articulate yourself, instead of doing what us Americans will do, is we'll just steamroll and keep talking until we come to what we're looking for. Most foreign people I've had on the show, I've noticed, will stop, think, and then say, like, okay, so it's this. And to me, I'm like, that's so much better than rambling on for another 30, 40 seconds trying to get your train of thought, because all you're doing, and especially from when I used to edit the show, all you're doing at that point is making it infinitely harder for me to edit that part out, to make it to where, like, here's you not rambling for 45 seconds to a minute trying to come up with something and just getting right to your point. So for me, it became one of those things where I was like, it's okay to not know something. It's okay to not have the thought fleshed out 100%, because we're fucking people and we're literally living and experiencing this moment in real time. And it's okay to not be able to have the words right away, and just to sit and actually think for a second of what you actually want to say, versus just being so quick to say something just to say something because you're afraid of the awkward silence. And that's something that I have taken from doing this, and have noticed in talking to people just one-on-one in real life, not for a podcast, that so many people do here in the States. And I'm like, it must be very interesting to kind of see the differences when you talk to people from all different walks of life all over the world, to pick up on people's mannerisms and to see how they are and their thoughts and viewpoints. And to me, that's what makes this so interesting to me, and was something really during the pandemic that I was so thankful for, that I had already established this, because when everyone was separated and couldn't hang out with anyone, I at least had this. So I still got that connection of new experiences and so forth. And it didn't quite bum me out as much as other people where they're like, I can't see my friends. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. What the fuck do I do? And it's like, you can call people. Like the thing that everyone hates doing, taking phone calls. Suddenly everyone wanted to have phone calls and do all those things, because it goes back to the connection of just one-on-one experiences and feeling like you've connected with someone and grown as a person from talking to someone. And, we have these devices that allow you to do it, but more oftentimes than not, we want short, quick little bursts when we have time.
Yeah, it's but again, sometimes elaborating on things can be good. There's sometimes the details in between the lines, but yeah, Americans have their culture, and yeah, as I said, like music and religion are a kind of my two big passions, and religion is very very connected to human culture. You could say not all cultures are religious, but I'm learning a lot about humans just by going through that. That's also the good thing about being a touring musician, that you can go to tons of different places in a short time span and talk to so many different people with so many different viewpoints about all kinds of shit. A lot of stuff that you never heard. Do you know about the Håvamål? Håvamål, it's like Norse, the High One speech, kind of like Odin's advice.
No.
It's Norse
Part of Norse mythology. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And it has a lot of advice. As I said, one of them is that if smart people are those who travel far, those who only live their entire lives in their own valley will never know how people actually think. So it's a timeless thing that one needs to travel and meet people in order to understand the world.
I think it's funny you touch on that, because that's something I've talked about. So, here geographically in the States, I'm from the East Coast initially. I live in the Midwest, so kind of in the middle of the US. And my wife and I have traveled now, like out west, down south, back east to some other places that she's never been. And it's interesting to me because I feel like when I hear people, and not to get, political about things, but when I hear people spew some of the things that they about their political beliefs, and this is what's happening in the country, or this is what's happening here, and I'm like, you have literally never fucking left this city, so you don't know what other people are experiencing. You don't know what other cultures are like. You don't know what you don't know. And to me, I feel like that's something, and I was just kind of talking about it with someone yesterday, actually, where I was like, I feel like traveling has allowed me to understand more of different things, like going out to Portland, Oregon, and just seeing the rampant homelessness of, literally people like tents up and down the sidewalks of businesses, and people, having nowhere to go, and then seeing literally like multi-million-dollar like condos and shit being built right next to them. And it's one of those where when you see something like that, you're like, man, like there are people struggling, and they're going to these places because it's where they will go to, try to chase a dream of theirs. And when I see things like that, it completely changes how I think about, different politics that are trying to be enforced and so forth. And I can only imagine that going international and abroad would do that even more when you're seeing these things, like, with what's going on in the Ukraine and so forth. It's like, I'm sure if you traveled more and knew those people, maybe you would understand a little bit more of that firsthand versus what you're being told is what's happening.
Yeah, definitely. As we talked about, with patience and people having like a tendency to jump to conclusions and all that stuff. Those kinds of people who don't travel a lot are often people who have a tendency to jump to conclusions about how other places are, or that kind of stuff in general. Mostly ignorance leads to judgmental thought patterns for the most part. But let's not get into politics. Maybe.
It sounds like your roommate or significant other just kind of got in there, so I'll end this for now, so you can spend time with them.
That's fine.
Last question for you. We're a week away from, as of when we're recording, the new record coming out.
Oh yes.
What are you feeling right now? You're a week away. It's something I like talking about, is how sometimes by the time you're releasing a record, you personally have been sitting on it or in some capacity have already had it for over a year, and you're kind of already maybe over it and excited about the thing that we won't hear for another 2 years. But how are you feeling getting this record out? What are you most excited to see reactions to?
Oh man, it's been such a long time. We started recording the guitars in was it October 2020, something like that. So we've been like we've been sitting on this flamingo egg for a long time, and I did so much more than just play guitar on this album, to say it like that. And after we got the mixes, we got the first test mix and then we got the second text mix, and it's been going constantly. I'm so sick of these songs in a way. I know every detail through and through, all the details that no one hears. But I'm so happy with what we did. We worked our asses off on this, and it's my first album on a major label, personally, so that's gonna be fucking amazing. Tomorrow we're actually gonna get our first examples of the vinyls, so we can take a look and see if it looks cheap or not. No, it's probably gonna look good. The Napalm delivered on Happy Heroes, so I think they will do the same here. No, I know there's something for everyone on the album, and there's something for everyone to hate on the album. So
fair enough. Are you someone that actually reads the comments on things, or do you just not even bother?
yeah, I do. I really thrive in negative energy, because that's kind of if people get angry, I know that it mostly comes from like a place of, no, this isn't metal, or this isn't cool, or you're not dark. What the fuck are you doing with my dark music? Kind of. There's some people who are respectfully like, I liked old Trollfest better. I wish you all good luck. Like those kinds of comments are like, oh, thank you. But you listen to our album, there's plenty of old school Trollfest there. So I hope you will enjoy it.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to hopefully, I would assume probably not this calendar year, but I would assume next year. You hopefully will maybe get here to the States, and maybe we can actually align in person and do a little bit of this in person, and maybe I can bring you some weird beers for you to try out.
We are all into weird beers, or most of us are. So that would be a great idea.
Yeah.
Should pop me a message.
Yeah, absolutely. Lastly, where can everyone find you, or anything you would like to plug online?
Well, beside Trollfest, I myself have a YouTube channel with a Norwegian name called Ondskapens Hersker. I can maybe link you that. Or you can check out my band called Flesh Meadow, like a nice green meadow of flesh. It's pretty interesting stuff. Björn, the drummer in Trollfest, is actually playing on our new release. So, and he's out with Borknagar in the US right now. So if you are somewhere in the States, you might be able to catch them still, if you haven't already.
Well, thank you for the time. And like I said, definitely have to link up again. Whenever you guys are around, I'll reach out to the publicist and try to arrange something to hang out. But it was good chatting with you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Likewise. You have still plenty of time left. So.
Oh, do I?
Thank you for thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Awesome. So that was my conversation with Fabio / Grimdrap. Again, I'm just terrible with names. Someone actually pointed that out on a comment of my Ghost Kid episode. They're like, "Oh, Sushi said to say how to say his last name, and you still got it wrong." And I'm like, sometimes these aren't names that I like say all the time, and like, I understand, like, to some people, you know, it's probably like, well, how do you not know how to say that? How do you not know how to say that? And it's probably a band or a person in a band you know and you like, and you've been saying their name, or it's on your radar for a long time. not mine. Granted, I also have a real fucking easy last name to say, and people still fuck it up. So I just assume people are just terrible with names, and it happens, and it's fine. It's not a big deal. So if that offends you or whatever, then I'm sorry that I don't know how to say your favorite person's faux name of them in a band. So apologies, but not really. What I won't apologize for is actually trying this beer. It is hot as shit. It's been almost 100 degrees like the last couple of weeks here in the Midwest, or at least here in Michigan. I can't speak to the rest of the Midwest. But holy shit, it's been hot. I worked my ass off today before I started recording this, so I am going to cool down with a nice Martin House Brewing sweet and sour plums. Ooh, see, I'm not really big on plum. I thought this was great when I grabbed it. But we shall see how this is. Okay. I don't know if plums taste like that, and although all I can think of is actually the scene from all I can think of is the scene with Will Ferrell from Eastbound and Down, where he's like, deep down in your plums, and he just starts laughing. If you've never seen Eastbound and Down, highly recommend it. If you really want to laugh, go watch the Eastbound and Down, I think that's season 2 bloopers. And it's him, Craig Robinson, and Danny McBride, and they're like doing a shot where Danny McBride and Craig Robinson are on either side, and Will Ferrell's character is right in the middle, and he looks like Ric Flair circa like 87 to like 92, and he's just deep down in my plums. Oh my god, so fucking funny. But anyway, wanted to take a minute to I guess shout out this beer. It's actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be, since, like I said, I don't like plums, or at least I don't think I do. We're kind of starting to wrap things up. I enjoyed that chat. It's one of those things where, I was talking with someone recently at my housewarming party, and they were asking how the podcast was going, and I had made a comment about, like they asked who was on, and I started naming off all the people I have coming up, and for the most part, I got a blank stare, which I knew exactly was like, you have no idea who any of those people are. And then someone's like, it's so crazy that you know so much about music that you know, and you can talk to all these people. Like, I don't even know who those bands are. And I said, honestly, a lot of times I don't know much about these bands, and I don't know anything about the people. And I go, into a degree, that might be a bad thing, because some people are like, well, then why would you talk to someone? Because people are interesting. Like I said, the crux for me was talking about Eurovision. From there, Fabio and I found a way to talk at length about a lot of things. And I walked away from this chat being like, I'm so fucking glad I did this and took a risk in talking to someone that I don't know. But even more to the fact, that's why I love this medium. That's why I love having these conversations with people, because I don't know where the fuck they're going. And sometimes it's in talking to strangers that you can learn so much more, especially people who don't live in your country. And I wish more people probably would take advantage of being able to learn and grow outside of their bubble, because that's how we grow. That is how we grow as people. I know I just made a joke about how I don't eat plums and I don't really know what a plum tastes like. Like, there's some shit I need to work through about why I have a really weird eating habits, but I'm getting better, and I've gotten better over the years. But that's the thing, is I'm starting to get better. I'm starting to get out of my own way. I'm starting to learn to like other things and not be afraid of kind of the unknown. And that's what this podcast is. That's literally what half of it is anymore. Like, I talk to people and I don't know who they are. I don't really know much about them. And I feel like that's kind of the fun. Like, that's sort of what's sort of interesting to me about some of my favorite podcast people is, like Marin. I'm listening to an episode he did with Benedict Cumberbatch, and he's like, I don't really know anything that you do. I don't watch Marvel movies. I don't watch this. I don't prep for anything. And at first I feel like Benedict was kind of taken aback, but then Mark kind of found his way to his question, and then off they go. And that's sort of the beauty of this. And that's sort of what I hope I kind of can do for people who maybe look at this and go, I don't know anything about Trollfest. Neither did I. I literally learned, as you heard. I'm learning everything as you're hearing it in real time. And to me, that's sort of the fun and the alchemy of this whole thing, is just kind of stepping out of your comfort zone and finding yourself and finding out who you are and who other people are. So I hope in that capacity, if you're still listening to this and you don't fast forward through this, thank you for checking this out. Hopefully you do go check out some Trollfest music. I find it highly entertaining. I have since, find myself watching their videos and all that kind of stuff while I'm, doing other stuff, and I have a good time. Puts a smile on my face. And at the end of the day, isn't that all you want? Just someone to check out your stuff and have a good time doing it? Go check out Trollfest. That's all I'm going to say. If you would like to keep up with Trollfest, it's simple enough. You can go to trollfest.com. That'll be your landing page literally for everything. But if you are too lazy to actually look in the show notes and you're going to listen, Although I don't really imagine people do that either. So you know what? I'm just going to revert back to the show notes. Show notes, trollfest.com. There you go. If you'd like to keep up with Fabio himself, you can find him at Grimdrap, Grimdrap on Instagram. It is set to private, so probably won't get to follow him unless he accepts you. So there's that. If you would like to keep up with the podcast, simple enough, Brew Speak Pod on all the socials. If you would like to support our sponsors for supporting us, please do. It would mean the world to me. Rockabilly.com, you can go over there, save up to 10% by using our code BREWtally. Bean Bastard Coffee, go to thebeanbastard.com, pick up some coffee. If you are in the Buffalo, New York area, please go support the brick and mortar. They're doing great things down there. I really love the coffee, love everything they do. Please support them. Last but not least, On Point Pomade. It was Maddie Mullen's birthday a couple of days ago as I'm recording this. So you should go to On Point Pomade, use our code BSP15 at checkout and take 15% off your total purchase order. And we'll just call that a happy birthday gift to Maddie. Till next week, I will talk to you all then. Our guest is John Corabi, the former singer of Motley Crue. That was a fucking blast, and I can't wait to share that episode with you. So please come back. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll talk to you all then.